From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jessie and Zach Merchant.
Hey, good Sunday morning. Zach is off this week. In a moment, we sit down with two candidates hoping to make waves here in Georgia in 2026. But we begin with some back and forth between Insurance Commissioner John King, who is running for U.S. Senate next year, and the two current Georgia Senators, Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff. Now, in an interview with us more than a week ago, King, a Republican and military veteran, said that Democratic Senators Warnock and Ossoff ignored his pleas during the 2021 fall of Afghanistan to help Afghans who worked with the U.S. Zach Merchant picks up the story here.
I was getting calls from Afghans saying, can you help get me out? And I called, both Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock. And I says, I need some help. They wouldn't even respond to my call.
You never got a response?
Never got a response.
But emails recently obtained by the 11 Alive political team from the offices of Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff appear to show that King, in fact, was in contact with them at that time. In one exchange between a King staffer and an Ossoff staffer on August 26, 2021, King's staffer wrote, "Thank you for all of the help from your office over the past few days. Commissioner King said he and Senator Ossoff have had several productive conversations since last night. We talked with King again Monday to ask him about the apparent discrepancy."
By the time they engaged us, the crisis had been over.
King argued his exchanges with Ossoff and Warnock staffers, which, according to the emails, happened after the Capitol fell but before the last U.S. troops left, were too late to help, and only happened after King criticized the government's response in an interview at the time.
Calling me a week later, my goodness, come on. Nobody reasonably expects. That is somebody trying to cover their rear ends. And you know what? That is what politicians do.
Why would your staffer, though, say it was a productive conversation that you all had if as you're telling it now, it didn't get the job done?
It didn't get the job done.
But why would your staffer then say it was productive?
See, Zach, at that time, what it was is it was a glimmer of hope that something could be done. But by then, it became blatantly clear that the Biden administration wanted to turn the page because they wanted the photo op.
Now, of course, John King is one of several Republicans planning to challenge Senator Ossoff in 2026. You can see Zach's full interview with John King right now. It's streaming on 11 Alive Plus. Well, the race for lieutenant governor has a new addition. Republican State Senator John F. Kennedy, he says he wants the job to keep Georgians growing, learning, and safe. The Republican from Macon served as Senate Pro Tem under the Gold Dome and sponsored Governor Brian Kemp's signature piece of legislation on changes to litigation awards, or the so-called tort reform bill. We start our conversation with Senator Kennedy talking about the timing of his announcement. Why are you deciding to announce now?
We're 11 months away, and quite frankly, there's a lot of a lot of offices that are going to be open, from the U.S. Senate seat to governor to lieutenant governor, attorney general, and maybe others. So Georgia's a big state, and so I've got a lot of ground to cover to introduce myself to folks that I don't know and talk about the record that we've built, because I do think it comes down to making sure we get our message out of what our vision is for the state of Georgia for the next 4 to 8 years.
You've been very close with Governor Brian Kemp, even authoring his signature piece of legislation that did pass this previous session. Are you confident that you will have the backing of Governor Kemp in this run?
You'd have to ask Governor Kemp about that. We do see things very similarly. I admire his leadership style. I admire what he has done. What I really have to have is the backing of the Georgia voters, and that's really what I seek through the campaign process.
Republican Casey Carpenter, who put together a petition on change.org calling for a bipartisan immigration reform to make sure that we are deporting the quote-unquote bad guys, the criminals, and not moms, parents, students. Is that something that you would support?
I haven't seen any proposed legislation, and as they say, you have to see the details. I do know Representative Carpenter, and I think he's a good legislator and has a good heart. I would say what you see embedded in that issue and him calling for something to be done is not only a Georgia but a national frustration over the immigration policy or the lack of an immigration policy that we've had for the last 4 years under Biden, where the borders were completely open. It's been absolutely disastrous for not just Georgia but for the country. And so that has created these circumstances where we now have to deal with people that are in the country that should have never been let in. And how do we deal with it? I would tell you the second part of my answer is, as an attorney, due process and making sure that the rules are followed whenever you implement laws or laws are going to affect how people are treated. I think the process is very important. And I think that's probably what Representative Carpenter, I've not talked to him about this and his idea.
Would you be open to it?
Absolutely, I'd be open, especially if we're talking about making sure we preserve the appropriate due process and that folks are treated fairly. But it's not just being fair, we also have to follow the laws that are on the books when it comes to the process. But also bear in mind, there needs to be an efficient way to deal with the problem of the lack of an immigration policy for the last 4 years, where we now have folks in our midst that want to do us harm that should not be in this country. How do we deal with that most efficiently and effectively so that we wind up being, back to one of my 3 points, Georgians want to be safe. I want to make sure we keep them safe.
Now, Kennedy joins his fellow Republican State Senator Steve Gooch and Democratic State Senator Josh McLaurin in that race so far. And now it is time for our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Cody Hall for the very first time joining the Georgia Vote, a political strategist and senior vice president at Ascent. He is the former press secretary for Governor Brian Kemp and currently works as a senior advisor to the governor. We do have a disclosure from Mr. Hall. He is working with Senator Kennedy on his campaign and several other Republican candidates. Devin Barrington Ward, a progressive community organizer, political activist, and managing director of the Black Futurist Group. And from the AJC, politics reporter Greg Bluestein, also an author and contributor to MSNBC and NBC News. So earlier we heard from John King, who's hoping to unseat Senator Ossoff. How important, and do you think it is likely, what the formation of is a Trump and Kemp endorsement? How could that help him?
I mean, look, I think that the entire field is kind of waiting to see what the governor and the president decide to do, because I think personally that gives us the best chance of beating John Ossoff next November. Because when you really look at it, we have a good case to make for a Republican taking that seat. John Ossoff voted against protecting women's sports. He voted against increased aid to Israel. Right after the October the 7th attack, he voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which, as everyone knows, was the main driver of the 40-year high inflation everyone has been dealing with over the last few years. So there's plenty of material there. I think for Republicans, we've got to get unified as quick as we can, make sure that we raise the money to be effective, and go out and win next November.
What would the timeline of this, what would that look like, and how could it help these candidates? We know that Buddy Carter is also running.
Yeah, Buddy Carter's in the race, John King's in the race. Both have said that they're going to stay in no matter what, even if they're not this joint Kemp-Trump endorsement pick. The timeline's pretty quickly, though, right? We're a year and a half out from the November 2026 election, but what they want to do is stop a stampede of candidates from getting in that could lead to this really messy primary. John Ossoff already has $11 million in the bank, but the other reason they want to kind of get behind a unified candidate is to avoid this primary from going to be an all-out audition for MAGA support that would pull the candidates even further to the right and make them more unpalatable to a general election electorate.
I think the concern about will people be able to shift back to the middle after going through a Republican primary like this? And so I think in some ways they create a impossible situation for candidates that want to be able to appeal to independents, because while Brian Kemp's endorsement will help you with independents, I think right now with the state of the economy and how people's sentiments are around President Trump, independents are going to be a little concerned about a candidate that may be backed by President Trump in 2026.
That is definitely a concern for some people. Guys, let's switch topics here a little bit and talk about something else that's been lighting up the headlines in Washington, a bromance or a breakup between Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
The drama.
The drama. Do you think that this breakup or bromance or whatever it is going on right now, could it have an impact on the EV industry here in Georgia?
I don't think so, because our EV industry was growing so much prior to even the Biden administration. During the first Trump administration, where the governor announced a series of deals that continued on for the next few years. I think this is unfortunate what's going on currently, because I think the focus needs to be on making sure that we get the reconciliation package through the Congress, because if that bill is not advanced through Congress and signed by the president, the American people will see a tax increase to the tune of $4.5 trillion, because that bill continues the Trump tax cuts of his first term. So that should be our focus, is making sure that we get that through so that Americans don't see their taxes go up. It also has a historic amount of border funding. It has real reforms to our entitlement programs that need to happen. So from a Republican perspective, let's get back focused on the main thing, which is enacting the president's agenda through the reconciliation
Let's
package.
get the progressive perspective.
Yeah, so I'm loving the drama, although there are real consequences of it. But this is an example of where Republicans want to have it both ways. Elon Musk was supposed to be the guy who's coming in to cut all the waste and abuse and fraud and all of these things and reduce the deficit. He's left, that hasn't happened, and now he's criticizing the bill that Republicans are saying are going to reduce the deficit. You can't have it both ways. And so they have an impossible problem with Elon Musk that they are going to have to fix. As it pertains to the EV industry, that one of the provisions of the bill is the elimination of that $7,500 EV credit. If I'm, an investor at Rivian, I'm concerned. And so, the governor put a lot of our tax dollars on the line, giving incentives to Rivian and others. And right now, the economy's tight, consumer spending. And so any incentive that you are taking away from consumers to be able to purchase things like vehicles, they're going to decide to put that purchase off. And so what does that mean for companies like that? Yeah. I'm less concerned about the shareholders. I'm concerned about the workers who will be impacted by this.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick pause. We'll see you guys on the other side of the break. Welcome back. The list of people who want to be Georgia's next governor is growing. On Friday, Democratic State Representative Derek Jackson announced that he's running. The lawmaker who represents parts of Fayette and Fulton counties, he says that he's running to prioritize Georgia families, education, plus women's and children's health care, among other issues. We start our conversation with his thoughts on how he'll stand out from his fellow candidates.
My 42 years of leadership, my resume, differentiates me from everyone, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side. No one has 22 years in the United States Navy like I do. No one has 10 years of corporate America experience like I do. And only a few have 10 years under that gold dome. And so when I think about the landscape on the Democratic side, I'm not so much concerned when citizens see my resume, I'm on the top of the list. And I don't say that in a bragging way, but I'm saying it in the most confident way. No one else has 42 years of experience like I do.
So would you say that your next couple of months is educating people about who Derek Jackson is? You might not know the name, but check my resume.
Absolutely. And some of them, quite frankly, already know my name because when I ran for lieutenant governor 3 years ago, we crisscrossed Georgia. In 33 days, we traveled 8,000 miles. We were averaging about 230, 240 miles a day, getting our name out there. And I took 14 counties in South Georgia. I came in first place. Came up short for the lieutenant governor race, but that created a buzz 3 years ago.
What do you say to those people who say, hey, look, you did not win this race. How can I trust you to win the governor's race?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same question they're going to have to ask Stacey Abrams, right? And so we don't always win when we run for a race. But what they will get is that Derek Jackson never quit on them. Derek Jackson got back in office, as I am, to continue to champion their voice. I will not quit on them. I will be an advocate for them, just as I have been with labor. When they were on the picketing lines, I was there too. As citizens were protesting these last 8 weeks, I've been there too.
You brought up a very popular name, Stacey Abrams. As of this moment, she has not turned down a third run for governor. What would a campaign for you look like running against Stacey Abrams, who is a huge name here in Georgia? Or do you think it's time for her to pass the baton and let somebody else run?
Yeah, I think it's time for Stacey to pass the baton. If she's reading the room correctly on social media, they're all saying no, Stacey, and I echo that. It's time for us to move on in Georgia from Stacey. We don't need someone that's going to show up every 4 years for office, and so we have to think about, what do we want in Georgia? What kind of leader do we want? Do we want someone that's simply that we're going to hear their name every 4 years, or do they want someone that's with them every day, as I have been since I've been serving under that gold dome?
Hey, our panel's back here. I got a little reaction from you all on that interview. Devin, how does Derek do in a primary?
You know, I'm not sure.
Mr. Jackson.
I'm not sure how Representative Jackson does in a primary. What I do know is that in order to win the primary, you're going to have a roadmap. And so what I'm less clear about with him, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Jason Estevez, and others is, how are you going to come up with this roadmap and pathway to victory in the ways that Leader Abrams would be able to, because she has crossed the state multiple times with millions of campaign dollars, and she has a built-in electorate in both the primary and the general election. So she's not starting from zero. And so for others who are in that primary, they're going to have to figure out how they build the campaign infrastructure that she already has on day one.
Yep, and she's not in the race
She's not in the race, and she could be the kind of break the emergency glass candidate who can get in the race next February if she wants.
Yeah.
Right. The question for Representative Jackson, he's certainly a serious contender. Is he a top-tier contender who can actually compete with the two candidates already in the race? Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, State Senator Jason Estevez. He came in 6th place in the Democratic primary for Lieutenant Governor a couple of years ago. Can he raise the money? You know, he can say all the right things, but can he raise the money you need? This could be a race that could cost $100 million.
We know that the convention happened this weekend. A lot of excitement down there for Republicans. Greg, I want to come to you because you wrote about this, and you wrote about the unification, or what it used to be to where it is now, the relationship between what people call the quote-unquote rhinos to the MAGA Republicans. And you wrote in your article that it seems like the party is shifting towards MAGA.
Yeah, there's always nasty infighting at these fractious events. Democrats have the same sort of infighting at their party conventions. But the really titanic struggles between the mainstream and the MAGA are over, because Donald Trump won, he's the president, and even the mainstream forces are now kind of in lockstep behind at least most of what Donald Trump represents as the president. And even the ultra-right, you know, even the sort of far right is finding itself sort of ensconced within the establishment in many ways as well. So it's just been this interesting shift after covering these things for the last 15 years that I've witnessed.
As somebody who's helping these campaigns, what is the strategy going into these candidates saying regaining trust to those Republican voters? Sure.
I'll start by saying that I'm in the camp of Run, Stacey, Run. I think the third time is the charm. I didn't wear my Stacey Abrams t-shirt today, but I hope she does it. I think for anyone running for office right now, President Trump obviously tapped into something in the 2024 election because he was focused on trying to make their economic lives better, make sure that those kitchen table conversations across the country, that he was listening to the fact that they were paying way more for groceries, rent, the everyday needs that so many families across the country have. And that would be my advice to any candidate running for office is don't paint yourself as MAGA or non-MAGA. Paint yourself as the person that's going to go out and work and fight for everyday Americans, whatever position you're going to be in, because that's what people are looking for. I think a lot of folks are tired of politics. They're tired of the same old, same old. Mm-hmm. That's why Trump won, or one of the reasons why Trump won, in my opinion. And I think that that's what you're seeing, not only on the Republican side, but also on the Democratic side, is who can articulate a vision of helping everyday Americans in their everyday lives, whether that's paying for groceries or whatever it may be. On that note, we are going to table it here for panel. We will be right back after the break. The long-running YSL trial is down to just one defendant. After 3 years, nobody will be convicted of murder. Well, this week, Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis, she dropped the last remaining murder charge in this case. She originally indicted 28 people, including rapper Young Thug, accusing them of multiple murders tied to the Bloods street gang. Several defendants pleaded guilty to lesser charges or had charges dropped as part of plea deals. Well, on Thursday, DA Fonnie Willis told 11 Alive she still considers the case a success.
My message to taxpayers is it was an amazing time. We had 19 convictions. The community is safer. We made sure that we got the resolutions we want. If they're unhappy with sentencing, they should elect other judges.
Christian Eppinger is the final defendant in the YSL case. He is accused of shooting an Atlanta police officer 6 times. We do expect jury selection for his trial to begin on Monday. Well, coming up next, we are taking a road trip north to Towns County. Our voice of the voter works with his hands, and we ask him the key to building more consensus and harmony in our country. Well, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters, and every week we are working to make sure that you are at the center of the political conversation. So in this week's Voice of the Voter, my co-anchor, Zach Merchant, he heads to Towns County to meet up with Caleb Ledford at his blacksmith shop in North Georgia.
We're in Young Harris, Georgia at my shop on my family farm.
This is where you grew up.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And now you work right here inside your workshop.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Primarily, my main objective is knife making, and then what I've kind of stumbled into is doing classes.
What does a perfect day look like for you here?
The fire's going, especially that one right there. It's got the whole place warmed up, and this place is filled with people, and we are just in here making some really, really cool projects.
You get to share it.
Oh yeah, you get to share the whole thing.
Do you think some people might be surprised when they hear you talk about your work, and they might have a preconception of what a guy who grew up on a farm in Towns County is like, and then hear you and go, that's not quite what I expected?
It is funny sometimes how there are preconceptions as to what life in North Georgia on a farm would look like, especially in a blacksmith shop. So that is one of my favorite things to be able to show is like, hey, this is what it actually is. It's a lot better.
When you look at the state of politics, what worries you the most?
To me, the biggest thing is just, I don't always think everybody's doing a good job of bringing everybody together as a whole. I think it's very easy to get wrapped up for one side to the other, when instead I think we should be more focused on, as an entire community in a nation, what is it that we could do to bring us together as one piece.
What issue do you hope your elected officials will pay attention to right now?
I myself, when it comes to voting and whatnot, I'm primarily faith-based on what I believe. Based off of my own faith, what should be going on. And there again, I just feel that everybody's so worried about how they can just win their side, how they can just be more politically minded instead of being, human, caring for one another, bringing people together, especially people of my generation. I'm very young. I just think it's very easy to get wrapped up in all the things that truly just don't matter so much.
Your faith is a big part of your life.
Yes. Very big.
We always end with this. What are you most optimistic about?
All the people that I get to have come in there again, I have people from all walks of life in the world. I truly believe the Lord and everyone is working back in that same direction of bringing people back together. So even if maybe from a political side that can be a struggle sometimes, I definitely think in the great means of life that it is truly coming back together.
And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.